What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is because people get to know you, they get to see you.
Making those efficiencies to maximise service profits as well as just product profits.
When you lose the enthusiasm, that's the point to move on.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated, yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times. And only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. In this episode of ScaleUp Radio, we dive into the world of TikTok marketing with Oli Hills, who is the CEO of Nonsensical. And Oli shares his expertise in organic growth, influencer marketing, paid media, and e-commerce strategy for brands. And in this episode, you'll learn how Nonsensical started through building communities on TikTok and then over time evolved into much more of a fully fledged marketing agency around building communities. And we discover also the importance of aligning business goals with the right platform and how Oli and Sam merged their businesses to create Nonsensical. So find out how they navigated remote working challenges and built a strong company culture. So join us for this really insightful conversation with Oli Hills. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. Today I'm here with Oli Hills, who is the CEO of something called Nonsensical. So Oli, welcome to ScaleUp Radio.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, really appreciate you having me along. I can't wait for this.
My pleasure. And I think you've had an early start as well today. So
I have, but yeah, keeping the energy up. Don't worry.
Good stuff. So Nonsensical could be anything. What's Nonsensical all about?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So Nonsensical is actually a TikTok marketing agency. Essentially, we work with brands to get impact on this new and exciting platform. Well, TikTok themselves call it an entertainment platform, which immediately takes it away from your traditional social media apps like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And it has honestly transcended the way people consume and create content. And I think for brands, it's a pretty scary place, particularly when you think about how it started during, well, predominantly kind of got real traction during lockdown with these dances and trends and all that kind of thing. And the beast that it's turned into today, I think brands are a little bit apprehensive with attacking the platform in full gusto. And yeah, we're here to help with regards to organic running and growing your own channel, whether it be influence marketing, paid media for performance marketing, and then even TikTok Shop, and actually focusing more on the e-commerce side, which is growing at pace or not. So yeah, we saw the opportunity with TikTok and thought, let's go for it.
Brilliant. And when did you set the business up?
So the business has actually been going since August 2011. So if you recall, in August 2011, I don't know where you were based at the time, Kevin, but the riots started to descend across the UK. Right. And every good business starts with the riots. Apparently. Indeed.
Or a depression or a pandemic or something. Yeah.
There you go. So we've ticked two of those boxes, that's for sure. So the riots obviously started in London, and next thing you know, Birmingham, Manchester, etc. And I won't take any credit, but a colleague of mine set up a Facebook page called Birmingham Updates. and it was essentially a Facebook page that told people what was actually going on. So where was safe, where wasn't safe. And people believed it so much they thought it was actually the police. And it grew to 65,000 followers in 3 days back when Facebook, you could do that on Facebook. Obviously, a bit more difficult now unless you've got loads of money in the bank. Yeah, so it just continued to grow. I personally got approached in January 2017, as the page at that point was about 350,000 followers. And they'd recently just taken on some investment, and the chairman, the investor, came to me and said, "Oli, I think you're a bit of an idiot. I think you can take this on." And I was like, "Why not?" So yeah, I got nothing better to do. I'll kind of come into my backstory in a little bit, but so I took over as CEO in January 2017, and then the rest is kind of history. So we've meandered into the world of TikTok from there, really.
Okay, and can you give us a flavour of the scale that you've got to now? And there's some pretty impressive stats on your website, for example.
Yes. So we're now a team of 19. We are based predominantly in Birmingham and Bristol, but my business partner Sam actually now lives in Berlin. Our head of partnerships is based up in Edinburgh, originally from California, and we have people in Brighton, Manchester, Reading, and everywhere in between. So yeah, we've grown what was literally a core team in Birmingham to now majority across the UK.
Yeah, very good. And in terms of TikTok views, something pretty, what it was, 600 million or something like that
million
in the last 12 months.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. I mean, there is the opportunity for kind of virality on TikTok. You can get 10, 20, 30 million views on specific videos. So yeah, we're really proud of the fact that we've managed to deliver such incredible numbers. Naturally, some of those are paid in terms of kind of paying TikTok to get impressions and stuff. But ultimately, our videos have been seeing that whopping number, which is pretty scary.
Yeah, so you know what you're talking about, certainly with regards to TikTok, which I know nothing about at all. As you said at the beginning, my impression of TikTok is really it's people doing silly dances and spreading around little videos, but I know it's a little bit more than that. But how do you, as an agency, make money? How does the business model work for you?
Let me just go back to how we started, if that's all right, because essentially the reason why Birmingham Updates was successful in its infancy was we'd essentially created a very localized community of Brummies who were interested in what was happening in the city. So we managed to grow it to, I think it's about 800,000 followers in total today with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And when I took over, what we started to see was that brands were approaching us to say, "Hey, you've got this number of Brummies, can we pay for some advertising?" So we actually, in effect, became a bit of an influencer in our own right. So we were working with some amazing companies, like we helped to Deliveroo launch in Birmingham. We worked with kind of Birmingham Airport, National Express, some of the local shopping centres like the Bullring. And all of a sudden, lockdown hit, and funnily enough, none of those companies want to advertise anymore because they're shut. So it was a torrid time. I think we lost 95% of our revenue in a week. It was brutal.
Wow.
But I mean, we were still in the game. A lot of people were totally out of the game. So I'm very fortunate to the fact that we still could kind of plod along in some way. And that's when I met Sam. So Sam, my now business partner, he basically set up Best of Bristol back in 2015, not linked to riots, funny enough, just a hobby of his. And we had the opportunity to co-pitch to Uber Eats, who, funny enough, were making a lot of money during lockdown. And we won it. So we basically won a deal in both Birmingham and Bristol. And at that point, we realized that actually we got on. One thing that I found personally was I was struggling myself to lead the business just as a sole kind of founder. And I'm very financial, commercially minded. I'm not that particularly creative in where I get my energy or where I feel kind of confident and passionate, but Sam is completely the opposite. So Sam is incredibly creative, like unbelievable, and actually needed help on the commercials. So actually it was match made in heaven, really, and we got on really well. And so we decided to merge. And then next thing you know, it's like, well, hey, every time we go on Instagram, every video that we see has got a little TikTok watermark just floating across every video. And we're like, well, what is this TikTok thing? So as we do, we said, well, why don't we try and build our own communities on TikTok? Why don't we just see if we can launch an account and see what happens? So went to one of the members of the team and we're like, Izzy, what are you interested in? And she said, mythology. So I was not expecting that, Izzy. I was really not expecting that. You couldn't have said something a bit easier, like music or something, but no, mythology. So anyway, we told her that's a bit niche and we should launch Endless History. So we created a community that was all about history.
I suspect mythology is not that much of a small niche, actually. It's probably quite a big one.
Kevin, you should have Izzy on this call, because funnily enough, we launched this community called Endless History, and every time we posted a mythology video, it just absolutely flew. Yeah. So we said to Izzy, it's like, right, you are right. So we converted the name to Endless Mythology, and it's now at 382,000 followers.
Wow. Yeah.
In 18 months. It's insane. And then Izzy came back to us and said, well, I'm really passionate about the LGBT community. I'd love to set up a community. And we're like, Izzy, you do whatever you like. Yes. So we launched Endless Pride. Endless Pride is now on 415,000 followers. And then most recently, we've seen a niche in property and real estate that's kind of untapped in TikTok. So we've launched Endless Property as a new community as well. So essentially, we started creating our own community. And we had the Birmingham Best of Bristol that obviously launched on TikTok as well. And brands would come to us and say, hey, we're interested in these communities you've built. Can we advertise? So we basically replicated what we'd done in Birmingham and Bristol, but now on TikTok. So that's one way we make money. Okay. So brands will pay us obviously to reach either the LGBT or the mythology loving community. Yeah. And then it got to a point where brands were coming to us and saying, hey, we love what you've built over here. Can you help us? Like, we don't know what we're doing. And next thing you know, the agency was born. So from building communities and showcasing that we know what we're doing, it actually led to companies coming to us and saying, hey, we'd love you to run our TikTok account. So we did that. And so brands now pay us either on a predominantly retainer to essentially create and run their TikTok accounts. But we've now moved more into influencer marketing. So brands will pay us to go and find relevant influencers and run campaigns. They'll pay us to do paid advertising or performance marketing through TikTok. So again, creating content, but then running the media spend and all aspects of TikTok's ad platform. And then training. So we do training for brands and also some strategy work as well. So yeah, from literally losing everything a week into COVID to now having a TikTok agency, it's been a wild ride.
Phenomenal. So, and I'll drill into some of those aspects.
Yes, there's lots there. Sorry, it's a good story. Hopefully.
Really good story, and certainly we'll explore a little bit as well about the merger side of things, because that would be interesting, I think, for people hearing how you went about thinking of that. But I'm dying to ask, if I'm running a business and I'm not on TikTok, why should I be thinking about TikTok? How can it be more than just a views? How can I actually make money from TikTok if I'm running a business? And I guess, that will depend on the kind of business I'm running, but what do I need to be thinking about?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And to be honest, I mean, I know this is all about advising entrepreneurs on failings, and that was one of our biggest failings. Actually, when we first started in TikTok, that's all we thought it was. It was like the briefs were always, can you make me go viral on TikTok? Because that's what people were seeing 18 months, 2 years ago. So we'd sign up a brand and we'd say, yeah, we can get you loads of views, but actually it wasn't delivering the impact they needed. So all of a sudden we were like, well, why are we losing clients when we're delivering hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views? And it was baffling. And it was at that point really that we had to kind of sit down and think, well, why would you invest in TikTok if views is not enough? And that's where the element of what are your actual business goals? And I always ask a question in discovery calls. It's like, what's going to get us dancing on the tables in 6 months' time? Right. What is that? What is the impact you need to see? Is it app downloads? Is it sales? Is it leads? Is it reaching a new community, younger demographic potentially? Is it changing the way your brand is perceived? Is it actually, I just want to be famous? Like, there's so many ways that you can play TikTok depending on what your goals are. And that's where we've added on these services actually, because Some clients will just come to us and say, Oli, I need you to sell me these widgets, and you need to sell them for under £2 cost per acquisition.
Yeah.
Cool. That's perfect. There's no point doing and trying to build an organic community. That's just waste of time.
Yeah.
What you need to be focusing on is, how do I do performance marketing to put your product in front of the people who are most likely to buy, and doing that at an effective cost per acquisition. Or one of our clients is a big floristry brand, and they're saying people think we're quite old and fuddy-duddy. We need to change the perception of our brand. And we're like, well, cool, let's do that through your organic channels, but do it in a way where the content resonates with that community you're trying to speak to and target. So ultimately the first question is always, what's a win? What are you actually trying to do? What are you either reporting back to your CEO, or as a CEO, what do you want to see ultimately?
Yeah.
And I think you have to be quite honest with yourself with regards to that question. And I think it's, let's be brutally honest. The world of digital marketing, or agency in general, we are probably the most replicable business with zero barrier to entry.
Yeah.
So agencies get a bad rep because it's like, oh, they're not delivering.
Yeah.
It's like, well, actually, have we understood the brief? Have we really understood what is a win? Because if we can understand what a win is, then we can help you. Because the strategies on TikTok, there's so many.
Right. And yes, there are a lot of people that purport to be TikTok experts and can get you millions of views or whatever. So, yeah. So you've obviously separated yourself from the fact that you can prove you've built these communities. I mean, that's a big aspect, But how do you position yourselves? How do you overcome that objection with other people?
Yeah, great. I mean, communities do help. Communities absolutely help, because we've kind of been there and done it. We invest money. We invest a lot of money. It took us a lot of time to earn any revenue through communities. It's basically a marketing activity for us. So that is one way. We're very fortunate for kind of the case studies that we've got now. That does help. We have worked with global brands on their strategies and actually delivery. But I think the biggest thing for us is twofold, really. One is educating, and TikTok isn't for every business. It's absolutely fine. I mean, there's 1 billion users globally, but it's obviously called Douyin in China and it's banned in India. So 1 billion users without two of the biggest countries in the world isn't bad. I think 44% of users on TikTok are over the age of 25. We ran an advertising campaign for an app that supported with car insurance, and the highest number of people seeing the advert cold on TikTok to downloading it were all over 55 years old, which is mind-blowing. You would not expect that at all. So it's actually educating brands around the opportunities that TikTok has. And it's being quite transparent to say, actually, if you're trying to achieve this, we don't think it's quite right, or actually you do need this level of investment and we don't think you're quite there yet. So there's no point kind of going half-assed into it. You've got to really commit or not, because I think if you don't commit to something, then you're never going to get the results that you're after. So educating is a big one. And then it's definitely a case of that briefing. And literally today I was on a discovery call and the brief was a little bit vague. And I said, honestly, I'm not going to put a pitch in for this because I don't think it's going to end well. And I think it's just having that real learning from our perspective of what's a really validated and qualified lead, and where we're actually going to be wasting not just our time, but their time and their money. And we don't want to do that. So I think just having that. Yeah, but I guess just doing the right thing. I think with agencies, if you can build a genuine long-term partnership because you're trying to achieve the goals that they want, then you've built something quite special. If you're just, I think, taking money, which, and again, I'll be very honest, is probably what we did right at the start, because you're just trying to bring clients in. It's like, yeah, we can get you loads of views, and we probably were a little bit hustly at the start, and that kind of came back to bite us. And we've definitely learned and moved on and changed the game since then. But yeah, those two things I'd say.
All right. Are there particular types or sectors that it works best for? Is it, for example, primarily business to consumer type businesses, or what about B2B? What would you say?
It fits naturally more to B2C. However, if you use TikTok, then my recommendation is go and search a hashtag that is within your niche or your speciality.
Okay.
And look at the number of views. I mean, I did this as an experiment and I looked at extreme ironing. Now, I know that's not B2C or B2B, but extreme ironing had something ridiculous like 300,000 views.
What is extreme ironing?
It's where you take an ironing board to the side of a mountain and it's crazy. So there's actually a community for extreme ironers on TikTok, and you're like, well, this is nuts. So I think it's more akin to B2C, like consumer apps, e-commerce in particular. Yeah, I mean, fintech is a big one, and finance and health and beauty, fashion. Obviously, they're like the key ones. Than sport, you'd imagine. But I think you can play an interesting game in B2B, and what I'd suggest to B2B businesses is actually go and look at influencers or creators who are already talking about your sector, and see if you can work with them, because they've actually done the hard work already. They've managed to build a community around a topic or a subject that you have some sort of influence or service that can help and support in that area. So it definitely does work. I think it's slightly harder, but I think if you're really clever with how you approach TikTok, then B2B is definitely, there's an angle in there for you.
Great. Brilliant. So you've already taken us through some of the sort of milestones along your journey. And one of those was when you merged.
Yeah.
To take us through, what, looking back on it, what sort of things have you learned from going through that process?
Yeah, no, really. And I mean, I got so lucky. I mean, I'm sure there's horror stories around mergers where they just haven't got on or whatever. And I think what worked well for Sam and I in particular was we'd done the same thing. So I will never take credit for starting Birmingham Updates. I didn't. I've managed to build on it and take it to where it is today. But I managed to do that because I was commercially minded, but Sam did it because he was creatively minded. So we both had a similar passion. We both had a similar backstory. We both had a similar vision, really, for how do you totally transform localized content. And that immediately sparked an interesting conversation between the two of us. And it was actually an introduction through my brother. So Sam went to the same university as my brother. So it was literally 2 months before lockdown. My brother phoned me up and said, I'm speaking to this guy called Sam. He's got this thing called Best of Bristol. He's trying to monetize it. He doesn't really know what he's doing, bless him. Can you have a chat with him? So anyway, he jumped on the train, came up to Birmingham, and we just hit it off. So we continued to chat, obviously during COVID, when we were both really struggling with how do we generate income. We just kind of confided in one another, really. So it was probably 8 to 10 months of conversation, discussion, chucking ideas around. Then we had the opportunity to co-pitch, which was actually something that was really powerful for us, because it's like, well, how can we work together as a partnership before we? Yeah. Because when you're under pressure, that's when the real person comes out, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And working on a big deal with literally with Uber Eats, you're like, well, this is a massive opportunity for us to work under pressure and get something right. So yeah, I mean, it like I said, it was probably 8 to 10 months of constant back and forth discussion, problem solving, getting to know each other, all virtually. Obviously couldn't go and see one another during that period. And yeah, it felt right. And as I said, I'm very, I think one strength I do have is I'm quite self-aware. And actually I knew for a fact that if I was to be leading on the creative side of this business long term, it'd fail, because it doesn't come naturally to me. I may have the odd one good idea, but I'm not creative enough to constantly come up with them. Whereas Sam his brain just works in a completely different way, and that just really worked for us. So yeah, I think if you feel quite lonely, I definitely felt quite lonely. Obviously, it was a really difficult time with losing business, and actually that support and that kind of partnership, I needed that personally. I don't think I could ever be I mean, I could probably give it a go, but I think a sole founder you've got to be a real special breed in order to be able to do that. Yeah. I think I learned quite quickly that I couldn't. So the partnership just made sense, and we'd gone through enough work together to sense that it was right and it felt right.
Great. And how did you manage the practicalities of putting the two businesses together?
So we were actually quite fortunate. Best of Bristol was quite in its infancy as a business. So Sam had obviously created the community and just started making some revenue. So we actually decided to just move the asset Best of Bristol into, because it's not really a thing. It's just a Facebook page. It's not really a thing. So we moved the Facebook page under our business manager and wound down Best of Bristol, and then did a share transfer in the current business to get Sam in directorship and shareholding. So
Okay.
yeah, it was easy for us. Again, I think circumstances wise, it wasn't too painful or didn't need lawyers or anything like that. We just managed to do it.
Yeah, and I know, other people think about going through this. One of the questions is, well, how are we going to decide on the proportions of the ownership of the new company? You've got this over here, which may or may not be revenue generating. We've got this. How do we assess how that comes? What was your thinking behind that? What sort of approach did you take?
Yeah, and again, I think an agency is quite an interesting beast because you are nothing without creativity, and you are nothing without commercial nous.
Yeah.
And we thought, actually, if I'm going to be CEO, Sam's going to be chief content officer, it just makes sense to be equal. So we already had investment. I managed to raise investment when we were growing Birmingham Update. So we had investor, chairman, some capital to support, and I basically just took it to the board and I said, honestly, I don't think I can take this business on necessarily by myself. I can give it a good go, but actually, I think for us to really drive this forward, that Sam's the right person to do that. And proposition was, let's go 50-50. So yeah, it just made sense. And I think the conversation was actually really easy. We didn't have to really negotiate that hard, to be honest, because I think we both understood where each other's expertise lay. Yeah. And we actually knew that two were stronger than one. And that's kind of turned out to be true. The fact we got 19 people and turning over 7 figures now. So yeah, it's been it's been a hell of a ride.
So presumably your investors had already got a certain percentage of the business. So when you say 50-50, that's 50-50 of your stake.
Of the remainder, correct. Yeah. It's been quite interesting, actually. I always thought I was motivated by money. And going through that process, I actually realized I'm not that motivated by money. I'm actually motivated by just hard work and doing interesting things.
Yeah.
Which is weird. But yeah, I just love every day waking up and it's like, what's the challenge today? Do I feel like I've moved the dial a little bit, or I can't honestly imagine sitting in a 9-to-5 job. I honestly, people say this, but I don't think I could ever go and get a job. I'd be too much of a nightmare.
I hear this a lot. I mean, money clearly is important, and some of us are definitely about making our millions and whatever. But I think at the heart, from the people that I've talked to, the majority of entrepreneurs are exactly what you said. It's about they enjoy the challenge of solving a problem, and it's almost like it's almost like a strategy game at the end of the day, isn't it? And the part of the fun is, okay, well, if I did this, what's the knock-on effects of that? And we've got this challenge over here. How would we solve that? And I think that's what drives a lot of entrepreneurs, probably more than just making a load of money.
Yeah, and I think again, something I learned was, if you get that right, the money will follow.
Yeah.
Like, if you get all your calls right and you keep going, and you survive longer than everyone else, and you continue to innovate, then it will naturally happen. It will naturally happen.
Great.
And one thing that we're talking about now from a strategy perspective is, well, TikTok's not going to be the new thing forever.
Indeed.
It's new now. But Facebook was new at one point. Now it's not necessarily. Instagram was new. TikTok is new. But what's next? And actually, our big strategic play is we want to take clients into the new.
Right.
And there's an app called Lemonade, which is absolutely exploding at the moment over in the US.
Okay.
We're already starting to create communities on that platform.
Right.
So for us, it's like, well, how can we validate and prove that we're the best by creating communities? So we're constantly on the lookout for new social platforms that are evolving.
Yeah.
And then the clients that we've taken into TikTok, we can say, well, we've taken you there. You can trust us now to take you into the new. So you can see that kind of the evolution of how Nonsensical will continue to grow.
I like it. Taking to the new is lovely turn of phrase as well, and kind of sums it up. And also, really at the end of the day, you're not. And you've described this, I think, already. Really, you're not about TikTok. You're about the communities and leveraging the power of those relationships. So it's what's the new innovative way of doing that, rather than it's just TikTok and nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I'm about to date this episode, but Apple this week have just launched their new headset. And you're like, how is that going to transform content consumption and creation? Well, that's a huge challenge for brands. I mean, they've only just worked out how to do it on a smartphone. and most even aren't doing that very well. Now you've got potentially 100-foot screen in your eyes.
Yeah.
Like, how does that change the game? How do you make stuff a lot more immersive? What happens around the outside of the screen to bring it to life? What about audio? Audio needs to be so much more powerful now. So yeah, you can start to see where the new is happening so much quicker than it's ever happened before. And you have to take some bets. I mean, a lot of brands bet on metaverse. I mean, millions of pounds in metaverse. Some have invested millions of pounds in NFTs and crypto, and you've got to pick your bets well. I think we will always remain within the space of content and communities and kind of, I guess, marketing through those channels. But yeah, taking clients into the new, and that excites me, because it's like I literally have it's currently unknown what we will do next, but that's really exciting.
Excellent. So you mentioned the 19 people, so that's quite quick, I think, from what you're talking about through lockdown primarily through to now. So how do you manage the people side of the business? Because that's quite quick expansion. You've now got 19 people. That's not that easy to keep control of.
Yeah. Well, we now have layers. I never thought we'd have layers before. So we've got a head of partnership called Melina. She's amazing. Focuses more on like the client strategy side. We have Nat, who's our head of TikTok, which, believe me, is a real job role. So she looks after our account managers who look after our clients. And then we have Sarah, who's our head of communities. So she looks after Birmingham Days, Best of Bristol, et cetera. And we've just empowered them to really own their team. So we had a big offsite around Christmas, the 5 of us with obviously Sam, and set some really quite grueling targets around community growth, people development, and obviously agency growth. And seeing those 3 grow has been amazing, because actually what we had to do in order to grow was empower everyone else, and trying to build that team remotely was also extremely difficult. But if there's one thing I think we've done well, and again, the team will tell you this, so I will hope that they would say this, but I think we've managed to really harness a decent culture within Nonsensical. So we put up a job ad the other day, and we had 400 applications in a day, and the majority had said it's because it looks like a great place to work, and I love that.
Brilliant. So for people listening then, how have you gone about building that culture? And as you say, lots of people will use the excuse of the fact that, well, we've got remote working now, it's so much harder. You're talking about having people in, Birmingham, Bristol, but Edinburgh, Berlin, right. Berlin,
yeah, all the bees, Brighton, Berlin, all the bees.
So how have you managed to build and keep that culture?
So we reset our values during lockdown, and we got some of the team involved in that. So passion is one, curiosity is another, and obviously creativity is the third. And we have a fourth one, which is just relentless honesty. Just always be honest. And we just find everything we do has to link back to one of those things. So at the end of a day Friday, we'll all jump on a call, and I will just sum up very honestly how the week is going, what's happened in the business, where we're being challenged, where we're not doing so well, and just being very brutally honest with how we're performing. Because I think if I can be quite vulnerable and honest, the team feel like they can be vulnerable and honest. And I think you have to be vulnerable. Is a really key aspect of enabling people to feel secure within their environment. Bizarrely, we have a Slack channel called Hits, and basically, if you get more than 100,000 views on either your community or your client channel, you stick it in TikTok Hits, and everyone celebrates. It's like amazing. The comments in there, it's just like, oh, that's so good. Like, love that, amazing. So you just have that constant element of showing passion towards what you're doing.
Yep.
Like, people are thriving to get hits. They love getting hits because it makes them feel great. And the team wise, everyone's like really bought into how you got the hit and learning. And that when we say you put a hit in the hit channel, you have to explain why you think it was a hit.
Yeah, great.
So then you have to be curious. You have to be like, well, actually, why why did that work? So you always got to challenge yourself. You've got to question yourself. So there's just things that you can do in your day to day that without saying these are our values, you can just live by them. And we're quite hot on making sure we always come back to those things.
Interesting. I like that. Now, I recall a software gaming company that would do something similar with their hits, but they would also celebrate their misses.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Have you thought of doing that? So they would literally they would cull a game every quarter, and they would celebrate culling it. It wasn't a case of trying to brush it under the carpet, but they would actively celebrate it and talk through why it was a miss. Yeah,
nice. So we don't do it as brutally, I don't think, but we do have very honest retrospectives, and that's a real key part of everything we do. I generally don't sit in them because I'm not creative, and my opinion on that side of the business is actually pretty void. It's like Sam looks after that. But yeah, we get the team in a room. We generally try and meet up once a quarter as a whole team and do it in person. It does help. But yeah, monthly even on Zoom, we'll do retrospectives, and we'll look through the accounts that we're running for ourselves or clients and be like, why didn't that work? What was it about that you don't think? And it's just a constant reinforcement of learning. Yeah. So yeah, we don't have a miss channel because I think there'd be too many misses, to be honest. Social's hard, right? Social's hard. So I think there's the way we do it is through honest retrospectives, and those sessions, they're brutal. Yeah, that's where you get that element of creativity, honesty.
Very good. So you got a lot right. Sounds like, the culture and building the team side of things, very, very good. Looking back, maybe on the period, maybe, I don't know, since the merger or whenever you'd like to, what would you say with a bit of hindsight maybe you would do differently?
Wow. I mean, we are a people business, and we have made some wrong hires.
Right.
And we tried to shoehorn people into roles that weren't right for them because we were probably a little bit maybe too caring or too scared to make the difficult decision. And it sounds horrible, but we probably hung on to some people for far too long who actually we should have spotted earlier that weren't quite right for us, and had to make that brutal decision earlier. We are much more brutal now, kind of slightly more negative person, or they don't quite fit in. It can actually drag the whole team down. So yeah, I think if we were in hindsight making decisions on removing the people that maybe was an incorrect hire, and we can only stand up and admit that we got that wrong, which is difficult. I think I mentioned earlier, the effect was getting excited about actually just winning as many clients as we could because we thought it was sexy, and actually we just bought on the wrong clients and they weren't right for us. We were right for them. We were going after the wrong targets, and it ended pretty messy. So yeah, I think the biggest thing from our perspective was always, how do you manage growth sensibly whilst remaining true to what we're trying to do? So yeah, wrong clients, wrong people, and not being honest enough at the time to make those difficult decisions. I think that was probably the biggest mistakes we've made, and probably has held us back, to be honest. Yeah,
good. Thank you for sharing that. And what have you changed then within the business now? How do you go about your hiring to try and avoid some of those mistakes?
So me and Sam used to interview together, and now we do it separate. Predominantly, if we were hiring creatives, actually I want Sam to be the one asking the more technical, creative questions and seeing how they thrive in that way. And then if Sam likes them, and also Nat, so we have an interview with Nat as well, who's obviously our head of TikTok. If they both approve, then they have a final interview, second to last interview with me, where I do just ask predominantly culture questions. And agency life is hard. It's hard, it's relentless, it's brutal, it's rapid, it's you got to work late sometimes, it is a performance business at the end of the day. The agency is about delivering impact and performance. So I will generally seek out are they the right fit for Nonsensical? And then one thing we've done, which has been incredibly powerful, is we give them the opportunity to have a call with someone they will work with, one of their peers.
Right.
And we let them basically have pretty much the final decision.
Okay.
Because they've got to work with them.
Yeah.
Day to day. And actually, if they see something that isn't quite right or they doubt, then we listen to them a lot. And actually, that's been incredibly powerful. Rather than, oh, by the way, here's a new person, they're going to join your team. I feel like they've been involved in that decision-making process, and yeah, it just they will ask different questions to what I would ask.
Yeah.
And I'll be brutally honest, we're a lot quicker to fire people if they're not right, and just move them on and just have that honest conversation and say, I think we got this wrong. It's not a right fit. And I've only ever had one person where when we've had that difficult conversation, it didn't end well. Yeah. Most of the time, everyone will say, yeah, I think you're right.
And how do you do that in a way that you keep it objective? So that you're not, you mentioned that maybe you were guilty at one point of carrying somebody a little bit too long, letting it go on a little bit too. How do you make it objective so that you can have that practical discussion that's not too emotional?
I don't really know. I don't think I've ever thought about it. It's just that gut. I think that gut instinct, which is the worst answer in the world that no one ever wants to hear. But so I always sit down and I always just say, like, how's this working for you? And because we've created that culture of honesty, I want to hear from them.
Yeah.
And if you create a safe environment where they feel like, actually, I'm not being my best, or I can't be my best, or actually this isn't quite right, there might be a very good reason that we never know about. Remember this one time, this lad handed his notice in, and the first time we'd ever heard that he felt overworked was the day he handed his notice in. And I was like, I was gutted, like genuinely gutted, because I felt like we'd created an environment where you could come and speak to us, and however you were feeling, and he kept it bottled in, which was a real shame. And literally, we had no time to do anything about it because at that point he'd kind of checked out. So always give an opportunity to explain and talk through what's right. I think we're very clear with what our objectives are. Work isn't all fun. Sometimes you got to come in here to perform and do your job. So we're always very clear around what our objectives are. We're always very clear around our expectations, but that's just in terms of our honesty.
Yeah.
I think if you start from a base of being incredibly honest with people, then it makes those conversations actually quite easy because everyone knows.
Super. All right. And you mentioned quite briefly earlier on that you'd taken in some investment. So just slightly different tack now. And looking back on getting in external investors, what have you learned from that? What advice would you give to people thinking about bringing on an investor?
Yeah, smart money. Smart money is key.
Right.
Yeah, you don't just take money because you feel like you have to. I think that I do think that part of the world has gone a little bit, where it was sexy to raise your seed round and I'm raising Series A, and you don't hear as much about that anymore, from my opinion anyway. Because you found that people would just bring on money from investors that ultimately didn't care, couldn't add any value, were actually real difficult to work with. And it's a marriage, isn't it? It's probably more binding than a marriage going into business with someone, because especially when you take money and there's shares involved, it's difficult to unwind. So yeah, my view is always find an investor or a investment house that has exactly the same values, are bought in for the long run, can act as a mentor. I mean, the chairman of our business is the greatest mentor ever. While we still are accountable for revenue and cash flow, we have a call most Thursday mornings where it's just like, how are you? I say, I'm struggling with this at the moment, or this is a blocker, or I've got this problem, I can't quite unpick it. And he is always there to say, oh yeah, this happened to me before and I tried this, or have you thought about it? And yeah, just incredible. So I would find someone who adds more value than just money.
Excellent. Really good advice.
Which is probably the biggest advice I can give. Board meetings are hard, obviously. They're challenging, but they're challenging, but I enjoy them because it's the right challenge. And I feel challenged but supported, and I know he's got our best interest at heart. And I think if you don't have that same dynamic, I think it's incredibly difficult to actually grow a business if you haven't got the smart money.
Super. Brilliant. So what's the legacy that you want to leave with the business?
No, I've never really thought about it.
Okay.
Which is weird, isn't it? I mean, so we're a people business, right? We're only ever as good as the people that we train, develop. And ultimately, I think just thinking about this off the cuff, really. But actually, I think if we were to create a legacy where all of the next major agencies or the award-winning CMOs or marketing directors started at Nonsensical, I think that'd be awesome.
Great. Like it. Really nice. Good. So tough question for you in such a fast-moving environment, but where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, what would you count as success in 5 years' time?
Hopefully not living in this one-bedroom flat because it's too small. No. I think that element of, I think just having big respect in the industry, I think would be really powerful. Like I said, there are so many agencies out there that like you're just a nobody. And what was so fascinating is when during the start of lockdown, we basically started offering social media services, so Facebook, Instagram, and no one gives you the light of day because they're either working with like a mate or they've been with an agency for 5 years and they're like, well, you're just another social media agency, like move along. Whereas now we're getting inbounds from some of the biggest brands in the world saying help, which is nuts. So I think in 5 years, if we were really respected in the industry as a real thought leader, as a real champion of not just TikTok, but the new, I think that'd be incredible. That'd be incredible.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Are you up for a couple of quick fire questions?
Yeah. As you can tell, I like the sound of my own voice, so I will try and be as quick as possible with these.
Oh, you're great. So if you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Just keep going.
Okay, brilliant.
Just keep going.
Any books or podcasts or other resources that you'd like to highlight?
So one book, one podcast. The book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah, okay.
It's an incredible book. Totally changed the way I perceive things. And I used to worry about everything. I just try not to worry about stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And the podcast, as well as your own, obviously, even though it's a radio station, is the High Performance Podcast with Jake Humphrey. Yeah. And very good. Very good.
Excellent. Good stuff. Apart from TikTok, what apps do you use the most? Do you find the most useful in the business, or even personally? Actually, what apps would you like to highlight?
Yeah, so business. I mean, it's really obvious on Slack. I just find it so good. Yeah, just for ease of communication, just so good. I am an absolute sucker for fantasy football, so the fantasy football app is personal. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, super.
Waste a lot of time on
that. Yeah. And who's had the most influence on you as a leader?
Good question. I mean, a slightly soppy answer, I guess, is my parents. They divorced when I was quite young, and actually seeing how they both dealt with that was incredible. So I lived with my mum, who's a single mum, moved to a new city. And she is just an absolute badass. She's so amazing.
Brilliant.
Like just that relentless, never give up mentality. Yeah, she's incredible. And then my dad, he had his own business, just him, but managed to get to like over 1 million turnover. And just again, that never say die, keep going, work hard. I don't think he ever had a day off sick, just relentless hard work. Never stop, keep going. So and parents have been incredible. I'm incredibly fortunate. My mentor is our chairman, our investor. He's exceptional. And then I'm off for dinner tonight with another one who runs a number of McDonald's franchises. And just kind of been there, done it, seen it all, and just someone that I can speak to personally and open up to is great. And then my now fiance, who runs her own business as well, social enterprise. She is an absolute machine, and really inspiring.
Brilliant, fantastic. So when you go out to dinner tonight, is it a Big Mac or what is it that you're
It's not actually. I had one last night, funnily enough, because I was late leaving this event and it was the only thing I could find open. So not had the healthiest of weeks.
Brilliant. Now I always ask this question, bit tongue in cheek with you, but what's your most successful marketing lead generation tactic?
Yeah, no, great question. Twofold for me. One is LinkedIn. I'm very stubborn.
Right.
And I told myself two things Christmas last year, for Christmas 2022. I said, I'm never going to drink again.
Wow.
Because I can't be asked with hangovers. And I'm going to post every day on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I've done both.
Brilliant.
And we probably get more inbound, just general opportunities for speaking events and stuff through LinkedIn than anywhere else.
Right.
And one thing, and I don't know how we've done this, and honestly, this is what I talk about podcasts when guests come on and they can't explain how something happened, but our team are relentless when it comes to posting on LinkedIn.
Okay.
We've never asked them or expect them to do it. But I think that's how we've managed to build this sense that we're almost bigger than we are, or our culture is all about being the best and being thought leaders, because my whole team are just constantly posting about amazing thought leadership, interesting TikTok camp, and we've never once asked them to do it. They
Fantastic.
just do it because they want to. And it's amazing. So LinkedIn is really powerful. And then, I mean, just before we hit record, I was telling you that I was speaking on stage yesterday over in Belfast. The day before that, I was on stage at an event down in London. And speaking events for us is incredibly powerful. What we do is it's very current. People want to hear about it. And the opportunity to stand in front of 50, 100, 200 people, not say anything about what we do at Nonsensical because it's kind of obvious, but just provide value around how you can win on TikTok. And they both work exceptionally well for us. So yeah, LinkedIn and speaking events.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much indeed, Oli, for being my guest today on ScaleUp Radio. Some really fascinating advice. I've learned a lot, and great to hear your story. If people would like to get hold of you or find out more about Nonsensical, what's the best way for them to do that?
So LinkedIn is probably best for me, to be honest. I do try and post pretty much every day with some interesting facts. So I'm just Oli, Oli, Hills, Hills. You should be able to find me. Our website obviously is just nonsensical.agency. So LinkedIn or directly through the website, that's probably the best place. I should say TikTok, but I used to have my own TikTok channel, and I got one video that got like 450,000 views. And then I just stopped. I found it easier and more impactful for me personally to be on LinkedIn than TikTok. So yeah, I'm very even honest with myself to be like, TikTok is for everyone, right?
Yeah. Great.
So yeah, LinkedIn or website, that's what you need.
Brilliant. Thank you, Oli, and thank you very much for being my guest today on ScaleUp Radio.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.